So TransCanada Pipelines has announced that they'll no longer be proceeding with an Energy East pipeline. No longer makes economic sense to them. Now, they wouldn't go into detail about what has changed economically that has caused them to back out after years of effort and multi-millions of dollars in sunk costs trying to get this pipeline approved. But Mike Hudima of Greenpeace and Montreal Mayor Denis Coderre are crowing about their victory. And I believe that they are right to take all sorts of credit for killing Energy East. Now, first we have Mike Hudima, who is a tireless enemy of fossil fuels. He's a notable leader in the environmental movement and sees humans as separate from nature, as unnatural, as a blight. And his movement has convinced the Liberal government that they ought to tax fossil fuels, the main thing that protects humans from the most adverse climate that would otherwise kill us. And here's the oil sands, which represent the most highly regulated, environmental, conscientious oil producers in the world that are responsible for an insignificant fraction of world greenhouse gas emissions, and who helped raise the standard of health and hygiene and economic opportunity for local indigenous peoples. And Mike Hudima and his ilk have helped convince the world that the exact opposite is true. So here we have Greenpeace, who killed the fur industry in the 80s and basically quashed all economic opportunities for indigenous people in northern Alberta. And now they're helping to kill their new economic driver, oil production. You know, over $1 billion a year worth of contracts have been awarded to indigenous-owned companies in the oil sands region. Now, how do you think that economic activity has helped these people? Do you think it's hurt their standard of living? Do you think it's hurt their level of poverty? Do you think it's hurt or helped their health and longevity? Have those things gotten better or worse because of this opportunity? Well, they can kiss those contracts and that opportunity goodbye, thanks to the efforts of Greenpeace. It seems like Greenpeace wants these people back living in teepees, struggling to survive, starving for food, so that they can be trotted out at the next dinner party as the poor, marginalized people who need our help. Look how empathetic and caring I am. It's disgusting. But that's what these Champagne socialists do. You know, when I lived in Fort McMurray, I had one Indigenous lady message me when Neil Young and Daryl Hannah came to town on their environmental crusade. And she said that these celebrity environmentalists showed up to her community and they were offered a display of Indigenous culture and flourishing. But in her words, they seemed less interested in our culture and flourishing and more interested in finding dead and dying Indians and animals. Yeah. In other words, these environmentalists need people who are marginalized, poor, downtrodden, oppressed. You're no good to them unless you are those things. They need to be made to look empathetic and virtuous. And if you're not poor, downtrodden, and marginalized, well, you're just no good to these people. So they want to keep you that way. But next we turn to Denis Coderre, the Montreal mayor, who threw up roadblocks to Energy East pipeline because he claimed to be concerned about the environment. Meanwhile, at the exact same time, he's approving the dumping of 8 billion liters of untreated sewage into the St. Lawrence River. Yeah, it sounds like you're really concerned about the environment there, Denny. And here's another tragic irony. Denis Coderre is crowing about this environmental victory on Twitter 2 days into a criminal trial over Lac Mégantic, where a rail car full of petroleum products crashed into a small town in Quebec, killing 47 people. Now, I'm willing to bet that those 47 people and their families, those fellow Quebecers and countrymen, wished they had a pipeline instead of railway transporting those petroleum products. Now, while Denny and Mike are signaling their virtue here, it's important to note that much of their virtue signaling lifestyle is being fueled by petroleum products shipped across the ocean from places like Saudi Arabia and Venezuela, places with poor environmental and human rights records. Now, why they aren't protesting this oil and these pipelines and these tankers full of oil coming across oceans is a mystery. I mean, it's almost like they don't care about the issues that they claim to care about. Once I asked an environmentalist I worked with on a project up in Fort McMurray why he flew all the way up to the oil sands to protest and fight against the carbon dioxide emissions that were coming out of that region when it was a drop in the bucket compared to the coal producers back in the US closer to home. And he was honest with me. He said that the oil sands is a geopolitical hotspot, that it's always in the news. People that come and protest the oil sands get noticed in the activist community. And he said, frankly, as a young man, I'm more likely to get laid if I fight the oil sands. Yeah. So I think it's safe to say that Mike and Denny care more about their personal image than they do about saving the planet. And that's why they fight the oil sands and not Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, and the blood oil that's coming over and fueling their lifestyles. The final thing that really makes me mad about Denny Cordier crowing about killing the Energy East pipeline is the fact that Albertans have disproportionately helped his city flourish. You know, Bombardier has received over $20 billion worth of taxpayer money over the years, with Albertans paying a disproportionate amount of that. Quebec is always on the receiving end of huge transfer payments from the federal government because they are a have-not province. So here we have a company that apparently can't operate without taxpayer funding, a province that makes irresponsible policies that keep it on welfare, Albertans who pay a disproportionate amount of money to keep these failing businesses and this economy afloat, and Denny Cordier, who gets to use the money hardworking Albertans earn to make himself look good, and this is the thanks we get. How long do you think you can keep biting the hands that feed you without any consequences, Denny? Never mind, probably a long time. Oh yeah, here's one more thing that makes me mad about this whole thing. You know, Brian Jean got in a lot of trouble with the pearl-clutching industrial complex for criticizing the Quebec Premier's opposition to Energy East. He said they would rather support a dictator and his abusive system to the people he controls rather than good, clean Alberta energy. Like, it's ridiculous, retarded. And what did people get mad about? What did they lose their mind about? Did they get mad at the fact that Quebec politicians are making decisions that are hurting people in material reality? No. They get mad at the fact that Brian used the word retarded. It boggles the mind. It really does. That people are more concerned about words, about appearing empathetic, about appearing politically correct and concerned than they are about actual death and dying. You know, the fact that our society is so divorced from reality doesn't inspire a lot of confidence about the future. We're working to fight that at the Libertarian Party of Canada. It's a losing battle. It'd be great if you joined us. Go to libertarian.ca.